All right, Headliner Nation, I hope you are all ready. Today's video is a culmination of months of hard work, watching film, researching players, doing mock draft, whatever it took to put together scouting reports so I could do my positional rankings for the 2025 NFL Draft. In just a couple of days, we are going to find out who are the next NFL superstars taken in the first or second round. Who are the guys going in the middle round that are going to be serviceable NFL players, and some guys that could even stand out? And are there any late round sleepers that nobody is talking about? So let's take this time to go through my rankings for every single position in this year's NFL Draft. Talking about the top prospects, the guys I like more than anyone else. Some under the radar sleepers that maybe you're not hearing a whole lot about, and maybe there's some guys that I think might be a bust or not nearly as good as what other people feel that they may be as well. We're going to go through a ton of players today, every single position. This is the video that you need to watch if you want more information on this year's NFL Draft and who the top players are that could be going to your team. And we're going to start at the quarterback position. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball first, and then we are going to move to defense. And I'll talk more about defense in a couple of minutes, but I'm sure a lot of you are probably here wanting to hear about the offensive player. So we may spend a little bit more time here, but at the quarterback position, I mean, Cam Ward is the #1 overall pick. I really feel like it. I don't think Tennessee is going to pass on him. And I've been saying for a couple of months now that Cam Ward is my #1 quarterback over Shedeur Sanders. But there's a guy that I have loved over the last couple of months. He was the very first player that I did film review on. He was the very first scouting report that I did for this year's draft, and it's Jackson Dart. And here recently, I finally convinced myself to move him up to QB2 in this draft. And it's nothing against Shedeur Sanders, because I think Shedeur Sanders is going to be a good NFL quarterback. I don't really think he's going to be a bust, but I don't think he's going to be an All-Pro or a Hall of Famer or a constant Pro Bowler or anything like that. Jackson Dart, however, has a much higher ceiling. There are some things that Shedeur Sanders does a little bit better that gives him a better floor than what Jackson Dart has, but Jackson Dart does some things way better than what Shedeur Sanders does that gives him a much higher ceiling. And that's why I'm going with Jackson Dart as my QB2 and Shedeur Sanders as my QB3. My QB4 in this draft class is someone who has heard his name come up a whole lot more over the last couple of weeks than what we've heard over the last several months. And the only thing crazier than the pronunciation of his last name is the fact that he's been in college for 7 years at this point. The dude is already married and basically drawing on his 401k and retirement plan. It's Tyler Shough, quarterback out of Louisville. I like this guy. I was going to say kid, but he is not a kid. 7 years of experience, so he knows how to play the game of football. He's got a really good arm. He's accurate. There are some things that he doesn't do all that well, but to me, he's like a Chad Henne. He's going to be a guy that's just like a career backup. He's going to come in at the NFL level. He's going to do some really good things when he's needed to, but other than that, the best thing that he does is hold the clipboard, because he's probably not going to be a starter in the NFL, but he's going to be a guy that could push a younger guy, maybe step in if they're trying to get a younger guy ready, come in and be serviceable if there's an injury and not really make a whole lot of mistakes. Tyler Shough really isn't that bad of a quarterback. And because of how good his floor is, that's why I've got him over a guy like Jalen Milroe, who's my QB5. The ceiling, I mean, it's sky high with Jalen Milroe. This guy and what he does with his feet and his athleticism is as good as anybody in this draft class. He makes plays outside the pocket, and he does a lot of things that give him a super high ceiling. But when you watch some of his film against NFL-style defenses, the kid just absolutely loses composure and doesn't process what's going on across from him. He's had some good games against teams like Georgia. He's had some awful games against teams like Michigan, where he just seems lost the entire time. That's why it's very concerning. He's going to need a few years more than likely to sit, learn the game of football, work on his processing speed, and how to read an NFL defense. My QB6 is going to be Quinn Ewers out of Texas, and at one point in time when he was recruited by Ohio State, he seemed like a future #1 overall draft pick, and at times he has played like it. But injuries and inconsistencies unfortunately have dropped him far below a lot of the other guys being talked about. Quinn Ewers has the potential to be a starter at the NFL level, but he's also a guy that probably just needs to sit and hang out for a little bit, learn behind a veteran quarterback, and really clean his game up, or he's just going to make far too many mistakes to really become a starter. Now, there are some quarterbacks that aren't listed on screen, and I don't necessarily have ranked because they'll be taken probably in the later rounds, but they don't really have a good shot of sticking at the NFL level. A guy like Dillon Gabriel, huge college career, but just doesn't have the NFL attributes that you need. Doesn't have the greatest arm, and the offense that he played in just doesn't really translate all that well to the NFL. Even though Bo Nix had some success last year, Bo Nix is a better quarterback than Dillon Gabriel. And then you got a guy like Kyle McCord, who's coming out of Syracuse, used to be Ohio State. Current Ohio State quarterback, Will Howard. Guys like those will be talked about, and they'll be drafted later on. And then a guy like Riley Leonard out of Notre Dame, his name is going to come up. He's got some great athletic attributes, but as a quarterback, probably doesn't have a whole lot of a future at that position. So more than likely, you'll see some guys like this drafted. They'll stick around probably in rookie camp, maybe be like a quarterback 3, but I don't really like any of them to be a future NFL starter. All right, there are a lot of running backs to talk about, so let's go ahead and touch on each of these guys pretty quickly here. Ashton Jeanty and Omarion Hampton, you don't need me to say anything else about these guys. You know how much I like them, especially Omarion Hampton. I think both of these guys are future NFL superstars. They're round 1 picks. If Omarion Hampton went inside the top 10 or 15, I would not be shocked. There are a few guys that could end up sneaking into the end of round 1, though, but I think they're more like round 2 picks. Now, guys that I have round 2 grades on, Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson. I like both of them. I think they're gritty running backs. I think they're tough running backs. I think they make guys miss. I think they break tackles, and I love that in a running back. A guy like Cam Scatabo, kind of the same way. But they lack the top end speed, the burst, and the acceleration that you really need to have a high upside type of career. So in the right offense, they could end up being very good, and they're going to be good, serviceable NFL running backs, but they're going to have to land with a team where they fit just right, and they're also probably going to have an injury for them to take over as the sole running back. TreVeyon Henderson is kind of different for me, though. Yes, he kind of has some of the same characteristics in terms of like an Omarion Hampton, where you look at the speed, the acceleration, and the burst, but he lacks some of the physicalness that you get from an Ashton Jeanty and the other guys that I talked about. Jeanty and Hampton have basically all the attributes that these guys after him have. These guys after him have one or the other. And TreVeyon Henderson, he doesn't have that grittiness. He doesn't have that fighting off the short yardage, breaking a ton of tackles, running through guys. He's going to be more of a finesse player. He's going to have more top end speed. He's going to be a little bit faster. He's going to help a little bit more in the receiving game. So their games are a little bit different. And some of these guys, I think, are going to go round 2 and into round 3 is when we see a lot of the running backs start coming off the board. And then after them, you've got guys that have some NFL characteristics. Now, Bashail Tutton and RJ Harvey out of Virginia Tech and UCF. I've talked about these guys in my deep diving running back video where I talked about the most explosive running backs coming out of the draft this year from college. Both of these guys showed some great characteristics to have some high-end upside, but they do lack some traits that they need to be consistent. And I think teams are probably going to look at them like in round 3 as a guy to come in and be like their RB2, but I don't think either of them will be starters right off the bat. Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, really good NFL or really good college career. I think he translate decently to the NFL, but he's also going to lack some things that are going to give him high upside. Taj Brooks, super fast. A lot of big plays in college. This guy seeks out 10-yard runs more than anybody else on this list, even Ashton Jeanty. Unfortunately, he is a guy that is going to have some concerns in terms of holding up over long-term NFL hits. And then a guy, Corey Kiner, out of Cincinnati. I want everyone to keep their eye on him. Not talked about really at all from what I've seen. I'm putting a round 5 grade on him, but he is the type of running back that could come out of the draft, land with a team as an RB3, work his butt off, and take advantage of some injuries and just do the right thing. He's never going to be super special. He's never going to have 30, 40-yard carries, but he's going to score on short yardage situations. He's got a nose for the first down marker. He can catch it out of the backfield. He can block on third downs if you need him to. He does everything good. He just doesn't do anything great. And that's why he's not really being talked about, because he's just one of those, he's a good player. And you may even hear a few names come up towards the end of the draft that you feel like may have a good shot. And over the course of the next couple of years, maybe they do get a chance to get a little bit of a run. But more than likely, you're looking at guys that need things to fall kind of perfectly for them. A guy like Devin Neal, Jordan James, Trevor Etienne out of Georgia, Ollie Gordon, Khalil Mullings, Jaden Blue, Donovan Edwards, DJ Giddens, Damian Martinez. These are all late round picks that do have some NFL attributes. Everybody on this list has some NFL attributes. They wouldn't be drafted. There might be some guys that are undrafted free agents as well, that just keep an eye on them over the course of the next couple of years. And we'll talk about a lot of these guys after the draft, because a lot of times with the draft, landing spot is almost as important as what you have talent-wise, because for some of these guys, they may not have been utilized at the college level correctly, but at the NFL, if they land with the right team, they're going to be utilized a little bit different, which will give them much better options of being a good NFL running back. So we'll talk about a lot of these guys in our 2025 Fantasy Football Draft Guide. It is going to be chock full of information when the draft starts about these rookies that are being drafted right now. Tons of scouting reports over all the fantasy viable rookies that you need to be keeping an eye on, whether you're in dynasty leagues, keeper leagues, or redraft leagues. And you can pre-order yours right now. There's a link down in the description below. Head on over there, get yours pre-ordered. We're going to start off with a ton of dynasty content, including these rookie profiles and scouting reports. And then as we get into the summer, you're going to see a ton of redraft information added. That is the bread and butter of what we do. In the comment section down below, if you have used our fantasy football draft guide in the past, I need you all to tell the people watching this video right now how successful you were because of it. Get yours pre-ordered right now, but let's move on to talking about wide receivers, and there's going to be a ton of them as well. Now, obviously, at the wide receiver position, there's three names that we are hearing about consistently in the first round. Last year's Heisman winner, Travis Hunter, obviously, Matthew Golden, and Tet McMillan. Each of those guys are first-round draft picks and have a whole lot of upside. The two guys that could end up sneaking into the first round are Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka. Now, for Luther Burden, I don't hate him, but I don't love him. I kind of comped him to a less physical Amon-Ra St. Brown. Some people feel like he's going to be a lot like Deebo Samuel. But for that to be a good thing, he's got to land in the right spot. So while he does have some really good parts of his game, I think landing spot is going to be very key for him. Emeka Egbuka could end up being one of the next great slot wide receivers in the NFL. He does a lot of things really good, and I really think that I'm higher on him than 90% of the people out there that do NFL draft analysis. I absolutely love Emeka Egbuka, and I think that he is going to be a big NFL talent on the right team playing from the slot. I'm really conflicted on these guys because I see some good things in their game, but then there's people that say they're first round picks. Heck, I think in the second mock draft I did, there was a couple of commenters that were talking about, I don't remember if it was Higgins or Noel, it might have been Higgins, that were talking about him being like a top 10 pick. That's way too spicy for me. They don't have nearly the type of upside as some of the other guys. Now, as like an X receiver, we definitely could see some good things from these guys. They could end up being players that just do football well. And I know that sentence doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but they just play the game well. They just go out there and they do the right things. They're not explosive. They don't have that type of upside, but they're serviceable NFL players. That's how I look at Higgins and Nolan. I'm not taking anything away from them, but I just don't see the type of upside where people look at them and say, hey, these guys are future NFL superstars. Another guy that I really like that I don't think gets enough respect is Xavier Restrepo out of Miami. When I did the Cam Ward film breakdown and when I was really diving deep into him, Restrepo was a guy that I watched and I absolutely loved what he did. He is Emeka Egbuka light. And I said Xavier Restrepo to me was like Cooper Kupp. And that's what he kind of reminds me of. That type of a player that's probably going to be taken a little bit later in the draft. That's not going to be talked about all that much. But with the right team and the right quarterback, he is a guy that absolutely could end up playing very, very well. I think he's kind of like a round 4 type player. The same thing goes with Alec Iomanner, wide receiver out of Stanford. I like this guy as well. I think he's a guy that is kind of even a little bit of a lighter version than like Higgins at this point. A guy that's going to play the X spot. He's not going to be super fast. He's not going to burn past cornerbacks, but he is a guy that fights really well at the point of the catch, that battles down the field, is super aggressive, is super physical, and he's going to be some quarterback's best friend in the red zone. He's going to be a guy that's going to score some touchdowns. So he's another one that I'm keeping an eye on that in the right situation could end up doing a very good job for his team. Now, there are a few guys that could end up even being drafted over the guys that I listed here as my top wide receivers. You've got Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. He just kind of missed the cut. I definitely think that he is a potential round 3 or round 4 player. I just don't like him nearly as much as I like some of these other guys. Jack Betch out of TCU, Jalen Royals out of Utah State, Savion Williams out of TCU. He's kind of that hybrid player. He really profiles as like a Cordero Patterson type of player. Could play running back, could play wide receiver, could return kicks, different things like that. Tez Johnson, Isaiah Bond, who was supposed to run a really fast 40 at the combine and didn't end up doing that. And like a Ty Felton out of Maryland. So there's a few guys that are going to go towards the later rounds as well. And I wouldn't be shocked that if maybe a couple of these names that I listed here, if you don't hear them drafted over some of the top names that I have listed at this position. All right, at the tight end position, there's really 4 guys that I like. Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland are the round 1 players. They block well, they receive well, they run well, they're super athletic, they can do a lot of different things. They are NFL ready tight ends. These are the type of guys that play on the end line, put their hand in the ground, they can stand up in the slot. You can do a lot of different things with them. They are going to make an impact at the NFL level right away. But then you got a guy like Mason Taylor out of LSU. I like Mason Taylor, but he's just not the explosive athlete that you see from Warren and Loveland. When I did my review on Mason Taylor, really, he's not going to stretch the field. Loveland and Warren could be used to stretch the field a little bit more often. Taylor doesn't have that type of speed. He doesn't have the deep play type of speed. He's going to be used on those intermediate routes. He's going to be used to kind of block and then kind of run out and maybe do like a little swing pass to or something like that, a little catch and run in the flat. Run blocking is also an issue for him. So he's a guy that may not be on the field nearly as much. Elijah Arroyo out of Miami is a guy that's like a true receiving threat. He is a guy that's a lot closer to really only being on the field for like passing situations. He's not really going to block all that well in the run game. He's not the type of complete tight end that you need. He's going to be a guy that's going to break some big plays. He could be used as a vertical threat, but he's not nearly as physical that you need to be at the tight end position. And these are really the only 4 tight ends that I'm really looking at as being like true game changers in the NFL anytime soon. Loveland and Warren, day 1 players. The other guys might take some time. Terrence Ferguson and Gunnar Helm out of Oregon and Texas. Keep an eye on them. If they land in the right situation, I might like them a little bit more, but situation will be key for them. All right, these are the positions that don't get nearly enough love. So we're not going to talk about them nearly as much as we did for the other key skill positions on the offensive side of the ball, but I still love diving deep into defensive players and offensive linemen. Starting with offensive tackles, I have got 5 first-round grades on offensive tackles. Will Campbell is still at number 1 for me. Kelvin Banks, Josh Simmons. Josh Simmons would have been the offensive tackle 1 and a top 5 player in this draft class had he not gotten hurt last season. I still think he's a first-round pick and a first-round talent. Hopefully all of his physicals, all of his health comes back clean, ready to go. He's on the right direction. He's on the mend, and he's still drafted pretty high. I think he's a great fit for Houston at the end of the first round. Ariante Ursary is a guy out of Minnesota that is not getting nearly enough love that I think is absolutely a first-round player, and he's going to make some team that drafts him really, really happy. Josh Connolly Jr., believe it or not, out of Oregon, used to be a high school running back. was recruited to play tackle at Oregon and has played tackle ever since. A lot of people think he is a top 10 to 15 player in this draft. I think he is a good player, but I don't think he is high as upside as some of the other offensive tackles that I have got listed above him. And then the offensive tackles after them, really the only other one that I like that was kind of close to being in the same kind of conversation as these guys is Emory Jones Jr. out of LSU, but I think he's more of like a second or a third round pick. For the interior offensive line, my number one offensive lineman in this draft is out of Missouri, Armand Membowo. And Membowo is a guy that I have been talking about since I started this process, and I thought that he really could compete for the number one offensive lineman spot. And I've got him mocked right now going to the New England Patriots. Does he probably go there? Probably not. But there is a lot of talk coming up here over the last couple of weeks that he may be the first offensive lineman drafted now that there's some concerns about Will Campbell and his arm length. Membowo can play guard. He can play tackle. He's only 21 years old. He's coming out young like Penei Sewell did. He can come out and he can dominate right away, whether you put him at right tackle, whether you put him at offensive guard, or whether it's a team that really needs help at left tackle. This is a kid that reminds me of a Zach Martin, a guy that's absolutely going to run people over on the interior line, a Quentin Nelson as well. This guy is an absolute beast. The next two guys that I really like that are fringe round one players are going to be Tyler Booker, guard out of Alabama, and Jared Wilson, center out of Georgia. Jared Wilson's only played center for one season, but he played offensive guard for his first 2 years at Georgia. He is a guy that I really think could end up sneaking into the end of the first round, especially with a team like the Seahawks and the Detroit Lions, who need help on the interior offensive line. Both Booker and Wilson could end up sneaking in there. If the edge rushers that like Detroit really desires are already gone, they could end up going with one of these guys, or one of those teams could end up trading back and get them at a little bit of a cheaper discount while picking up some picks. Donovan Jackson and Gray Zabel are also second round picks for me. Now, Gray Zabel is still being talked about as potentially a first round pick, and I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be a good NFL guard, but he's not, I don't think he has the high upside to be a first round pick at this point. I think he is a better value in the second round. And then Donovan Jackson, unfortunately for him, he had to slide out to tackle at one point this past season because of line injuries for Ohio State. He is a very good guard, but I think people look at his tackle tape and be like, there's some concerns about him, but he's not an NFL tackle. He is an NFL guard, and I think he gets kind of a poor knock because of that. So whoever drafts him in the second round, I do think they're going to be getting a guy that will work very, very well. All right, let's move to defense. I love talking about defense. We're not going to talk about it nearly as much as we did offense because more than likely if you came to this video, if you're already subscribed, you're subscribed because of our fantasy football information. So offense clearly is going to matter more to you, but maybe you're here because you just want to hear about some of the next players. Maybe your team in the draft needs defense and you want to hear about some defense. Maybe you play in an IDP league for fantasy football. Who knows? We're going to talk about some of this. Edge rusher is the deepest position in this year's draft class. I've got 7 first round grades for edge rushers. Abdul Carter, who is the number 1 or 2 overall player for almost everybody. Jalen Walker is basically the consensus edge 2 at this point. Shamar Stewart is very close to him. James Pierce Jr., I think James Pierce Jr. is a top 15 player. He gets a little bit of a knock because of some off-field issues, but I think from a talent perspective, he's very good. Mike Green is a very raw player, but he was last year's FBS sack leader. People are going to love that and covet that. Mykel Williams is going to be a guy that's going to be a good player. He's a first-round talent. I don't think he's going to be a guy that stands out consistently or is like putting up like, whoa, numbers, but I think he's going to put up good numbers. And sometimes good players are definitely good first-round picks. Maybe they don't have the upside of some other players like the edge rushers above Williams, but I still think Williams is very good. Donovan Ezuraku out of Boston College has really made his way into the first round after the combine. He is a guy that has a lot of really good tools and should end up going in the first round. There's a few guys that I have with round 2 grades that do have some potential upside, but They lack a little bit of the floor of the first round guys. Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina, Landon Jackson out of Arkansas, a guy that after like the Senior Bowl was getting a ton of hype, performed pretty well at the combine, has kind of disappeared into the background again, but I think there's some things that will keep him in the second round there. Princely Umanmielen out of Ole Miss, another guy that's going to do some good things. Nick Scourton out of Texas A&M, some guys with some good high upside motor. They just need to like refine some things within their game to be a little bit more stable and have a better floor. And then for the third round, Josiah Stewart and Jordan Bunch, Michigan and Oregon. These are the two guys that are kind of like the tail end of like NFL starter caliber edge rushers. There's going to be some guys drafted after this. You're probably, if you're an Ohio State fan, you're going to see that Jack Sawyer isn't on here. I'm sorry, but if you think Jack Sawyer is an NFL starter right away, this isn't even biased. I mean, I gave some pretty big hype to your offensive lineman there out of Ohio State. Okay, so don't sit here and call me a homer. I don't see it with Jack Sawyer. I don't see it at all. I think he's a good rah-rah guy. I think he's a guy that will be pretty decent in the locker room, but from just an NFL skill perspective, he just doesn't have it. He's just not that guy. And because of that, I've got to leave him out of it. So there might be a couple of guys that you haven't really heard show up here that will end up being drafted decently because of the name or where they came from. But I don't see them having NFL starter caliber type of attributes. All right, let's touch on the interior defensive line here real quick. Mason Graham at the very top is like a diet version of Aaron Donald. I mean, this is a guy that is going to do well against the run. He is going to get inside after the quarterback very well, and he's going to be a disruptor in the middle. Is he going to be a Hall of Famer like Donald? Probably not. I'm not going to bet on him being a Hall of Famer, but he's going to be an all-pro type of player that probably at number 5 to Jacksonville is going to make them look really smart. Kenneth Grant and Walter Nolan, you can flip-flop these two. They're both first-round talents for me. Both of them have a little bit different parts to their game. Walter Nolan might be a little bit better at getting at the quarterback and have some better sack numbers, where Kenneth Grant may end up being a little bit better going up against the run and using that big frame to cause a disruption in the middle and make players bounce it to the outside. Derek Harmon out of Oregon is another guy that has some fringe round one abilities, and some people feel like he is a round one player. For me personally, I have a round 2 grade on him, but he is another guy that, depending on how the board falls, would not shock me if he goes a little bit higher than what we anticipate. I'll be honest, there's only 2 linebackers that I really like in this draft class. There's only 2 guys that I even want to talk about. Jaheed Campbell is going to be a guy that is going to be a superstar at the NFL level. I think he's going to be a guy that is really going to be all over the field. He's got a high motor. He can play in the box against the run. He could drop back into coverage if you need him to. He could cause some pressure if you need him to from up the middle. Campbell out of Alabama, fantastic player. I absolutely love him. Carson Schweschinger out of UCLA reminds me of Luke Kuechly. The type of guy that when you kind of watch him on film, there's some good things that you see. He doesn't like pop off the screen like some other prospects do, but he is going to work so hard and play so hard that he is going to end up becoming a very good player in the middle of any defense. He has a round 1 grade for me. I don't think he goes in the first round, but I would not be shocked if he does. But anybody that drafts him in the second round will get an absolute steal. So a majority of the cornerbacks I'm going to talk about, I have first round grades on. After that, it's really a crapshoot of a lot of different guys, and you really could roll the dice with any of them. But the first round cornerbacks, I really like. Travis Hunter, I've got him at wide receiver 1. I've got him at cornerback 1. Travis Hunter, to me, may end up being a guy that plays the slot a little bit more often, plays more in nickel packages because he's going to be on the field so much as a wide receiver. But Jahdae Barron has moved up and taken that. If you take Travis Hunter out of it, my top only cornerback at this point. Love Jahdae Barron. I think he'd do a lot of good things out of Texas. If Will Johnson had just participated in the combine or his pro day, he would still be cornerback 1 for me. He did hold a private workout, never ran the 40 though. There are some questions about him and his health though. Maxwell Harrison had a huge combine, fastest guy at the combine. He ran himself into the first round as a first round cornerback. Shaven Revel Jr. out of East Carolina. Revel is a guy that dealt with an injury last year, and if it had not been for the injury, would be locked in as a first-round player. I think he falls out of the first round and goes in the second round, but he is a first-round caliber type of player. Trey Amos out of Ole Miss, he doesn't have the upside of some of these other cornerbacks, but he's got the floor of some of these cornerbacks, and I think he could end up being a very safe cornerback pick at the end of the first, but more than likely will go in the second. Azareye'h Thomas out of Florida State is going to be another fringe round one type of player. Does some things very, very well. Obviously, that's why he's a fringe round one player. But I think he lacks some of the upside because when you watch him on film, I think he's a guy that unfortunately may get beat a little too often to be a true cornerback one. I think he could be very, very good against wide receiver twos at the NFL level, but I think if he's a cornerback one, I think he could get ate up by some of the better wide receivers and have some really poor days against them. Let's go ahead and wrap up the video with the safety position. If you remember from a few years ago, I was a big Kyle Hamilton fan. He was the #1 player in my draft, and I loved what he could potentially do at the NFL level. Safety out of South Carolina, Nick Emenwari reminds me a lot of Kyle Hamilton. He's the type of player that could play like a hybrid linebacker position. He could play the safety position. He could play the nickel corner position. He could play in the box against the run. He can drop back into coverage. He can really do, he is a Swiss Army knife at the NFL level. And he's a top 10 player for me. I absolutely love him. Is he going to be drafted inside the top 10? No, he won't, but he'll be locked into the first round, and he's going to be a very good NFL player. Malachi Starks, I still have a first round grade on, and people either love him or are not that into him because Malachi Starks is a top 10 player for some people, and he's also a fringe round one player for some people. In fact, he is in the second round for some people as well. For me personally, I do look at him as a back half of the first round type of player. There's some things that he does very, very well. And the production last year at Georgia was down. And there's some things on video that are concerning from last year, but not nearly enough for me to look at it and say, hey, one bad year is enough to just write this guy off. Whatever NFL team drafts him will probably end up getting him right. And then really the only other safety that I'm really into in this draft, Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame. He's got a round 2 grade for me. There's going to be some guys after that, a Lathan Ransom out of Ohio State, a Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State. Both of those guys, kind of a round 3 type of player that are going to do some good things at the NFL level. They're just not the type of overall safety that these 3 guys are to be like true game changers in any defense. All right, Headliner Nation, hopefully you appreciated this video. I did fly through some of the names here, but I didn't want this video to be 40 minutes long, and a lot of you here may have only come for certain positions, or maybe you only cared about offense and not defense, but I just wanted to make sure. I have done a ton of work on this draft class, and I just wanted to put my final positional rankings out there for everyone to see, make sure they're out in the world, because why would I do all of this work and not share that knowledge with you? So hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Hit the like button if you did. There's a ton of draft content coming this week. So turn on your bell notification so anytime we drop new content, then you'll know about it right away and you'll be able to check it out. For now though, Headliner Nation, hit that like button for me. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.